So, my name's Linda BELLOS. I was born Linda Adibowale. My father's Nigerian. I was born in 1950, and I know that when I was born there were 30,000 black people in the United Kingdom, which is not many. And I experienced quite a lot of racism as a little child, and I remember having a black consciousness when the school tried to make me dance around the maypole tree to celebrate the British Empire. At 4 years old, I didn't swear, but I really said in my head, fuck it. There's no way I'm doing that. And I didn't, and I remember being sent to the headmistress's room, and I think I was put under I can't remember what it was, a piano, something. I wasn't bothered because there was no way. So I don't know why at 5 years old, 4 years old, I had a politics. Yeah, I don't know where that came from, except that my father and my mother taught me to be proud of who I am, all of the things. So my mother was Jewish, and she grew up with fascists on the street, and my father grew up in Nigeria, but inferior in his own country. And he taught me, and later my brother, because he's 2 years younger than me, to be proud of our heritage. And I think that I've always been political, and I hope I will always be political. I can't imagine me not being political.
So let me ask you a question then. So how was that, being from your dad Nigerian, your mum's Polish Jewish, how did that reflect when you was growing up in Brixton? How did you fit in? What was it like?
It fitted in fine. It fitted in fine in terms of going to the market, going to school. So in the 50s and 60s, my first schools were in Suffolk, as we used to call it. I went to a girls' secondary modern school, and it was Silverthorne. It's now housing. But at the 11 plus, there were different models. What's it called? Sorry, there were different marks for boys and different marks for girls. They allowed more boys to go to grammar school. I'm glad I didn't go to a grammar school, but clearly, I've subsequently realised that I have the skills and abilities equal to have gone. But I'm glad that I had the experience I have. As I was a working class girl. I was proud and am proud to have grown up to be a working class girl. But that does not mean for any of us who are working class, black or white, that we are not able to think for ourselves, to speak for ourselves, that we haven't been given equality of access to education is something that I think it probably made me a socialist. And I remain a socialist, even if we have got apparently comprehensive schools, but under the Tories, who'd know?
They wouldn't know. So can you tell me, what's your first memory of Brixton, of a place that's memorable to you?
I remember going with my mother to buy Gary and to buy pepper it's not there now. My Uncle Slim was the first. He wasn't, we was called Uncle. He wasn't, of course, my uncle. But it was a little Nigerian shop.
What is Gary? Because I don't know. What's
okay,
that?
Gary. I can't remember what the English name would be. It's I think it might be ground cassava. I can't remember what it is made from, but it's a staple product. And my father would sometimes have it with I think he had it with sugar. In the morning, he would have water in it. But he would make it with hot water. I used to remember making Gary and making fufu, and later learning how to cook African soup. So maybe it would be chicken, and I was boiling chickens, cooked for a long time, or I don't remember ever having beef. But yeah, no, sometimes we had beef because it was relatively expensive, you know. But lots of African food, and also from my mother, Jewish food. And what my father used to call jumble food, meaning John Bull food, so English food. And my mother couldn't cook English food very well. And we would have, during the week, my mother would cook, until I grew old enough to cook food. And I loved cooking, and I still love cooking. So I like cooking Jewish food. I like cooking. I make soup. I make curry and soup, African soup. And I make lots of French food and Italian and lots of things that I love cooking, and I love feeding people.
And is that the influence from your mum?
My mother and my father.
Okay.
Yeah, because lots of my dad's friends who weren't married would come over, and they would have African food, because if they didn't cook, they would be eating English food, jumble food, and so yeah. So culturally, it was wonderful having my mother's Jewish heritage and my father's Catholic Nigerian heritage. I didn't know he was Catholic until much later. He didn't, mainly because my parents didn't foist religion on us. We were free to choose whether and who we worshipped, and that included worshipping nobody. My parents were very, I guess the word is liberal, but I got a sense of the core of their politics coming in part from their how they grew up as religious people, in a cultural way that lots of people were back in the day. They were religious, but that's probably less so today. That fewer people go to church or go to synagogue or go to the mosque than used to be the case. It used to be a norm, and now it's a kind of political statement.
Yeah, it's funny you're saying that, because last week, when we've been doing this documentary, and people have been talking about the significance of certain places, but I said, oh, it's really weird that no one's really mentioning the church, where I grew up. It was such a foundation as a little boy in Brixton.
Yeah.
Especially as I went to my grandmother's Seventh-day Adventist, so I went to church with them. Then we went back to the church last week.
Is it up the hill? Is it up the hill, up towards Streatham?
Up Brixton Hill.
Yeah, I know it. I know.
Brixton Hill, and it's just stuff.
Oh, I know it. Where was it? Yeah.
Oh, it's still packed.
Yeah.
So when we went in there, the preacher was still doing his thing. He was back there for 2 hours preaching.
Yeah.
But it was really nice to see, even though it was just a small part of it, that people were still going.
Yeah.
And
But it's still part of culture. It's
Yeah.
still part of culture in a way that it very much was back in the day, and that would be true for white people too. Like white people in general were, Roman Catholic or they were Protestant, although we didn't necessarily say Protestant, were Anglican, and that was part of one's cultural life. And what I remember is how much we all got on with each other. There was no fighting between faiths.
So okay, what about the experience of growing up in Brixton, man? What was that like in general?
I found it pretty wonderful, actually. It was full of life. There were lots of individual people. One of the things I remember were people who had mental health problems. I'm talking about black people, and they were part of the community. That's what I remember, which was great. I found Brixton a diverse community. That's what I found. Lots of different people. White people, black people, old people, young people. There weren't many old people, but when you're little, if you're 25, everybody's old. But I don't know. I was taught about respecting your elders. That was a norm. Lots of things that were pretty good and felt for me safe, more so than other parts of London. I found much more racism in Camberwell, which is not very far. Now it's Camberwell's almost part of Brixton, but back in the day, Camberwell was mainly white, and Brixton was not mainly black. It was only 25%, but yet the media and lots of people would pretend that it was like 95%, and it wasn't true.
I've always struggled with that idea that they call Brixton a black town.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually much more deeper than that. You know, it's the layers is there, isn't it? You didn't have. I don't think I ever saw a complete black street.
No, exactly. Neither did I, and I think you still won't find it today.
No, I don't think
So,
you will.
so it is about, that's about racism. That is about treating black people less favourably. So the fact that there's more than 2 black people, that means, you know, we've taken over the street. That's the way the racists saw us. And although I say us, I knew at a very early age that I was black, notwithstanding the fact that I had a white mother. And I knew I was black because the racist told me so.
Quite blatant.
Yeah, I think the word nigger was used, and not only was it used for pairs of shoes. There was a shoe polish called Nigger Brown. Can you imagine?
Was it?
Mm-hmm. When I was little, I promise you.
So why do you think then? What gave Brixton? Because you hit it on the head. There's Camberwell and there's Brixton. What made Brixton so different? Because I remember when my mum moved from Lewisham, because a lot of people went to Lewisham to live, and then they come to Brixton. And so when we came to Brixton, we just, I don't know what happened. We just sorted in.
Well, it was a welcoming place. It was, and it was it was inclusive. I don't know what it was for white people. I remember when my parents moved to the house in Templar Street. Lots of white people stopped talking. Well, they didn't talk to us. They didn't talk to us for years. I think we got notices through the letterbox. We're bringing the neighbourhood down. So if I thought I was white or half white, these people made it very clear.
You wasn't.
I wasn't, but I never wanted to be anyway. I was proud to be who I was, and who I am. But I think that some people acted as though one black person was one too many. Some of them said it. I'm talking about in the area. As they moved out, more of us moved in. What can I say? It was as it was. We had to, the media, the political parties, this is before, remember, what was he called? Ghastly man. MP.
Not Enoch.
Enoch Powell,
Enoch
that's
Powell.
right, yeah, before that was 64, 64? Before those days, there were racists in Brixton, white racists, saying appalling things, and no media picking up and saying anything. So we kind of had to do stuff on our own, and I developed a politics which was not anti-white. I mean, I found that racism was wrong. So what the hell is the point of kind of doing it yourself if you think the thing is wrong? You judge a person on the content of their character, not on the colour of their skin, which...
It's funny you say that, because I never really got politically involved in anything. I just lived in Brixton and lived my life. I just felt we had enough issues going on to survive. And sometimes I would see things in the paper and I didn't realise I was talking about my area. That makes sense, because I'm in it.
Yeah.
So I've seen it slightly different. And so you're right. And there was racism. There was some ignorant people there that would call me names and everything like that. But there was also a lot of other people that saw me for my character.
Exactly.
Of what I was all about.
Absolutely. There were lots of... I have some very strong memories of Jewish people, white Jewish people who were they were more than... It's hard to describe. They were very positive, and our local MP was a Jewish man. I'm sorry to say I've forgotten his name now. I was writing about him last week. There were lots of good Jewish people. There were good Christian people. I'm talking about white Christian, white Jewish. So there was a handful, as it were, of racists, but the rest of the white people were inclusive. Mustn't forget the large Irish community, white Irish community in Brixton. So there was lots of good people who lived their lives. They, went to work. They went to church or synagogue or mosque, you know, and I found it a good place to grow up. Most
significant spaces.
Oh, I think the market, actually. The one of the market outside the town hall, which would be outside the cinema. The cinemas were very significant. There were lots of good films.
Great films. What was your favourite cinema?
I can't remember its name because it changed names, but the one opposite the town hall, the end of Acre Lane.
ABC.
That was down the road.
That was down the road. That wasn't the Odeon, was it?
There were two on that road.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, where were they?
The Ritzy wasn't called the Ritzy.
No, that's the Ritzy.
It's
What
a new
was
name,
it?
isn't it?
Yeah, the Ritzy is a new name. Ritzy's only been there for 20 years. Before that, it was something else, but that was a flea pit. But you could go to see really good films for almost no money.
Yeah.
Down the road was the Odeon, and then now on the same side of the town as the town hall.
Yeah. That was ABC.
That was the ABC. That's right. That was so. Those three cinemas, two of them were, as it were, respectable, and the other one was not so respectable. And there were always good films on, and you could go for very little money. They also didn't throw you out, but it was great, cheap. You could spend.
Our favourite word again.
Yeah. Well, if we didn't have much money, you know, our parents didn't give us bloody allowances.
Apart from the allowances that we're not going to get nothing.
Yes. No, I mean, I think I had a happy childhood, and both my parents were able to work, and they did work. And although as working class people they didn't earn much money, they earned enough to, you know, to make sure we had, you know, shoes and a winter coat, and kind of, you know, I was well looked after. My family wasn't reliant on one income. We had, you know, mum and dad.
So what was your first experience into politics? What made you get into that then? Because I remember you saying you wanted to be an architect, and all of a sudden...
I went to a secondary modern before I went to Tulse Hill, not Tulse Hill, Dick Shepherd. Before I went there, I went to a school in Walworth Road, just off the Walworth Road, and Albany Road. It was Albany Road Girls' School. What was it called? No, I can't remember. Silverthorne, that was it called. It was called Silverthorne Secondary Modern. It was on Albany Road, and I wanted to not leave school and work in Woolworths. Although Woolworths didn't take on black girls, not.
How did they get around that then?
Easy. We didn't have a Race Relations Act. We had a Race Relations Act first.
Were they blatantly saying
No blacks.
No, come off it.
There were lots of places around Britain where I grew up. No blacks.
Yeah, but
no Irish, no dogs. I saw it.
I saw that, but I didn't expect to hear that through the schools.
They acted. No, they didn't say it. They didn't say. Yeah. Yes, they acted. They didn't want you to go to somewhere you're not going to go.
They didn't encourage it. Okay,
but so my school had low expectations. There were about 7 or 8 black girls in my class, which was great. So instead of being one of 2 or one of 3. And lots of the girls were from Jamaica, specifically from Jamaica. And I'm still in touch with some of them.
Okay.
But I wanted not to be a typist or work in a factory. I wanted to be an architect, and I wasn't able to be an architect. There were lots of barriers in my way, and there would be barriers in the way of a white girl. Coming from the same background, class and ethnicity. I hate the word race. So I found another school, and that's the school I found was Dick Shepherd, which was a comprehensive school, and it did allow me to do a wider range of things. So I found the school. I don't know how I think I must have applied, and I got my mother to sign whatever it needed to be signed so that I could go, and I did. And I went
so
to.
easy was to move them days as well.
Yeah, yeah. It was relatively. I think I went went to be interviewed. I think they interviewed me. I said, well, I wanted to come to this school. I said why. I really did want to get on, and my accent wasn't like it is today.
What was your accent? Did they have the African accent?
No, mate. I was a just a working class South London accent. That's all. I'm not ashamed of it, but I did find that if I didn't speak with that accent and I had more words, a greater vocabulary, I would be better able to both express myself and get jobs and whatever that I wanted, rather than to be excluded from them, which is what class does. Class analysis and class discrimination puts working class people, black or white. I mean, it has as much, it's negative to white people and it's negative to black people. Not that we should all be the same, but, we all have different ways of developing, and we don't all develop at the same age. Some women, some men develop. When I say develop, I really mean extend their abilities, learn, want to learn, and they might be doing that in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, or their 70s. This assumption. This is what about the class system, about the system of organising, which assumes that everybody will, at a given age, have the same skills and ability.
If you don't, there's something wrong.
Yeah, and then you're kind of washed aside, and I'm hearing the current government. Here we are in 2019, making the same blasted mistakes as though everybody develops at the same age. Rubbish. Complete and utter rubbish. I'm not ashamed of my working class accent, but I did learn. I went to university as a mature student. I had 2 children. I was 28 when I went to university, and my vocabulary increased, and I understood. I could name the concepts that I was thinking about, which I didn't. I knew there was something there, but I didn't know what the relationship of one idea to another. Learning that, and the language that went with it, and almost the accent that went with it. I could have retained my working class accent, but I learned to think with this. Now, I don't know. I don't know if it's good or bad. I don't really care. It is as it is. I am as I am.
But that allowed you to grow, right? And then
yes.
Saying it took you into a field of the politics right
yeah,
after that.
Absolutely.
And
exactly.
that allowed you to then go in, probably started delivering where places.
I could do it everywhere. Yeah. So my accent can, do I want to say revert? I don't know. I can go back to my roots. I can. This is my middle class accent. I don't think I want to sound posh, whatever that means. But I don't think I want to go beyond this. There's nothing wrong with our accents, but our class system here in this country is so predicated, I said that deliberately, on how we speak and the language, the words we use, and we often miss the point. Somebody has got something really profound, important to say, but they say it with a working class accent. They maybe often are dismissed, and that's just pure prejudice, which has no benefit to anybody.
As my mum said, you hear but you didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a great. That happens a lot, right?
Yeah,
across the board. There's a lot of people hearing, but did you listen to me?
Yeah.
And
they're not.
They're not listening.
Yeah.
They can hear the high tempo, or they might hear the volume. They might hear a bit of aggression in there, but they're not listening to what you're saying and putting into context.
Yeah.
And I think
which is a great pity, because I think we miss the misunderstandings of human beings that we have is not helpful.
Because it takes away the passion, right?
Yeah.
If it's quelled all the time.
I can't and I won't. I will say what I think, or what I think. I'll say, yeah, it was deliberate. It was deliberate. I can, I like to say what I think. I like not to be so polite. In fact, I got into trouble when I said recently, after I saw a film of two young white men beat up an older white woman, I later, referring to that, I said that if I were attacked, I would beat them up. I can't remember exactly what my words were, but I meant it then and I mean it now. But what has happened is that I have been taken to court, and now I'm being questioned by the Labour Party as to the threat that I represented. I, as a nearly 70-year-old black woman, represent to two young white men. Yeah. I think the white men have re-identified as white women, but they were fined, they were found guilty of attacking a woman, an older woman, and I'm still being pursued because I said that I would defend myself if they attacked me, or anyone else like them.
I think this is one of the saddest things. I know I'm going to go back on track, but this is one of the sad, because I had the same problem 2 years ago, where Labour, what they call progressive, Labour supporters came into one of our projects, raided it, they did a sit-in. I must have called him a particular name. I said he's a cunt, and same thing. They took it as a threat, and I was really scared. I was found guilty. I was found guilty in court of this, and I was like, hold on a second, but he is. I didn't say anything wrong. I just said what I think was right. But it almost felt that there's no more room now for this type of.
Well, it depends who you are. It looks as though if you are working class or black or both, then you are subject to less favourable treatment. If you are a white man who is middle class or upper middle class or upper class, it seems that you can say anything you like. With impunity.
Yes, and if they say it's all been getting better, but it's really
where's the evidence?
I don't think it's getting better.
I certainly. Well, what has happened to me over the last, what is it now, how many years? We're coming up to, it's only, I think only 2 years this has been happening. But as I've also been getting, I have some health conditions, I don't appreciate it. I really don't appreciate it, but I remain adamant that if somebody physically attacks me, I'm going to defend myself. Sorry, I know it may be a crime to be a black person possessing a pair of mitts, fists, but tough.
So can I ask you then? So what in the 50s and 60s when you was growing at that period? What was the representation like for the marginalised, we was going to say black communities, but we decided not to use that word today. We're going to say minority groups and marginalised groups. What was the kind of representation going on there?
You mean like in Parliament and in councils? Level, yeah. Well, what I remember was we had a really good Jewish older man. I think he'd been in the wars. Now, can I remember his name? I think I said it to you a few hours ago, but I can't remember now. Marcus Lipton, that's his name. That was our MP. Yes. Marcus had a reputation for supporting. Well, he didn't discriminate. Put it that way. He didn't discriminate against black people. What I remember was he was more than supportive. He was great. That you could rely upon him if bad things were happening because you were black. He would be there. He'd be there for you. And I was only a child at the time, but I could see and hear because I was political. I did notice what was happening, and so I didn't think. I mean, there were other Jewish. Mainly, it was the Jewish men. There weren't many women in public life of any ethnicity. You know, most of the MPs were male. But there were some very good Jewish. There were no black MPs. There were no black men, I think, in the House of Lords in those times.
What was it like, the representation of marginalised groups in the community?
So I'm conscious of the Jewish men, one in Lambeth, one somewhere else whose name I can't remember, them being behind the 1965 First Race Relations Act.
Oh.
Two white men, I should say, two Jewish men. First, you probably don't even know that we had a 65 Act, because most people don't. Then it was 1968, and then after Britain entered Europe, we started with a 1975 Sex Discrimination Act, 1976 the Race Relations Act, both of which were formed because the requirements of the economic union. It wasn't called that then. It was called the Common. That's right. That's it. And I didn't know that till recently.
That it was called the Common Market?
No, that it came from there.
Ah.
That came from Europe. If it hadn't been for Europe, we wouldn't have the Sex Discrimination Act.
Really?
Yeah, looks like it. Looks like it. And it's almost like kept a secret, as though it was the idea of these Labour governments. Yes, the Labour government were there, but they got the idea and were required to. I mean, the stuff around sexuality came later. Now, this is the Equality Act 2010. Do you have a look? And I'll show you. I'll show you some more. Here's you can have a cleaner copy. Here, that's the cleaner copy. Then there's the Equality Act 2006. Most people don't know about these things, even though they're laws of this country. And the Tories had a way that we wouldn't have them.
This is what got the Windrush people in trouble, because they was kept away from information that, if they was informed, would have been valuable.
Yes. So
are you proving yourself that you belong here?
Yeah. So we're supposed to be a civilised country, and yet most people don't know the blasted laws of this country.
Such a simple thing to. We're willing to fight the law on the streets, right?
Yeah.
And throw bottles and bricks and things like that.
But knowing what the law says, when I did earn a living, and actually quite a good living, going into the Cabinet Office, the Home Office and elsewhere to train them and what this says, what they should be doing. And this is stuff that all citizens should know. These are our rights. And we fought for these rights to be equal.
Yeah, and we're not putting it into play. And this thing. And
absolutely. We should know what the laws cover us for, what it doesn't cover us for. What the law actually says, what our Parliament, what it's supposed to matter. Exactly. But most people don't know.
They want to try and do other things. And I'm like, what are you doing? It's there.
Yeah.
Let's get that and deliver it.
Exactly. And that's what I used to do. That's what until my partner got ill, and till the change of government. It wasn't just Caroline got ill. The change of government in 2012 brought a lot of very ignorant people into power. They did not know what the law said.
Yeah.
And one of the first things they did, and I hope you keep this in, one of the first things the Tories did when they came into power in 2010 was to get rid of the first clause, which is public sector duty regarding socio-economic inequalities.
Yeah,
Class.
Yeah.
They got rid of it.
Important line, yes. Right? Because does it say is responsibility? What's the word again?
The word, it says the public sector duty regarding socio-economic inequalities.
So what did they do? What did they
Well,
do to it?
what they suspended it. So they haven't thrown it out.
They're just
not enacting it. So the public sector duty and authority to which this section applies, and that means the health service. It means police. It means all of those. Everybody.
Round their board.
Yeah. It doesn't. That should be making decisions. Wait a minute. When making decisions of a strategic nature about how to exercise its functions, have due regard to the desirability of exercising them in a way that is designed to reduce the inequalities of outcome which result from socio-economic disadvantage. In other words, social class. So if something you were going to do as a council or as a government department, if that has the effect of causing
some eco-social
problem, then you shouldn't do it. So all this stuff around, what are they called? What are the government doing around paying people who can't work?
Social credit.
That's it. It wouldn't be allowed if that was implemented. Because it has the effect of causing disadvantage to people because of socio-economic reasons. Somebody came to me with a proposal that the London Strategic Policy Unit, which I chaired, which took over the radical bits of the GLC in 1986, that we should introduce Black History Month. I had thought about introducing Black History Month before, but the American version of it offered me, I just didn't like it at all. I still don't like American Black History Month. It's so middle class. And I just thought, it didn't motivate me. However, using the laws that we had, some of this stuff, I did think that Black History Month should be introduced. And what I thought I was talking about was the history of black people in Britain, not in the world, but in Britain, so that young people would know that our parents and grandparents didn't come to Britain for the weather. There was a historic reason. And so we did, this in 1987 was the first Black History Month in Britain, of this kind of autonomous way of doing things. I mean, I'm sure some people did Black History Month in 1980 something, early, following the American version. But this was a serious attempt to think about measures that would be beneficial to black people back in terms of history, the things we had done, things we could do. And there has been a bit of a, I don't know, what's the word? A bit of a argy-bargy about whose idea it was. I never said it was my idea. What I did do, however, as the chair of the London Strategic Policy Unit, was I gave approval, and I was involved, and I was subsequently involved. When the London Strategic Policy Unit wasn't there, I and other councillors and other individuals did put on events and activities to promote Black History Month. Black, African, Caribbean, Asian. That's what it was and what I think it should be. Otherwise, we are African. I don't have a problem with African, but if you mean, when I see the term Black and Asian, I am disgusted that we are defined only by the colour of our skin, and Asian is a place. People come from a place. Well, my skin, I mean, it's just illogical. At the same time, I had been and was involved in black sections in the Labour Party, which is the body, I was vice chair of it for the first few years, and the purpose of it was to make sure that the voices of black people, black, African and Asian people, were heard by the Labour Party. So black had a particular meaning, and now it's lost its meaning, mainly because it's lost its politics. There seems to be a bit of a dispute. Somebody who was an officer at the GLC says it was his idea. It probably was his idea, but to make it happen, you have to have some authority.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not enough merely to think it. And so, as I say, there's a bit of a dispute about who started Black History Month. I didn't say, I said to you, it wasn't my idea. But when I was proposed it, I've heard it said that it was that what's he called from the GLC, the leader of the GLC, Ken,
Yeah.
that it was Ken's idea, or Ken started. And I went, wait a minute, it didn't start in 1987, and in 1986 the GLC was abolished, so it couldn't have been him.
No, it couldn't
But
have been.
I took over the body that had the radical bits in. So, as I say,
So
I
you
don't.
think it was a radical move to bring it at the time?
Oh, it was. We agree. We wanted to see Black History Month as a body that reflected the history of black people, and by black we meant the inclusive, the political definition of black, not some. I'm offended, frankly, when we are seen solely on the basis of the colour of our skin. Haven't we fought racism on that basis? And now people are trying to reinforce it. Black is a political term which is inclusive. And in order to avoid Caribbean people being played off against Asian people against, this keeps happening. And this is what the divide and rule is, which is why you need the politics of black as an inclusive concept, rather than having one group played off against another.
Which is what they're still doing.
Indeed, which is why I get very cross with it and still want to reinforce Black History Month as an inclusive movement of ideas which celebrate the contribution that we have made to Britain. Now, I'm not talking about anywhere else. Black History Month in France would be wholly different.
To British version. Like
Yes.
It's the American version.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because it all comes out from different causes.
Yes.
From different pains.
Or, if not causes, at least but different experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've never think the Americans and the British have got the same.
Well, that's exactly when it was proposed to me many, many years ago, 1984, 85, to have Black History Month. And the model was the American model. And I said, personally, no, I don't want that. That comes from a different place. I'm not going to knock it. It may be entirely suitable for there. But our experience is different. Our experience of imperialism was different. So we had lots of things in common. One of the things the British did was try to play African against Asian. They're often doing it.
How did they do it in the beginning in your way then? In the beginning?
How did who do it?
Because
It was local authorities do
Because
it.
if I was to take that, what you just said, on street level, Asian and blacks look, it's different life.
Yeah.
It was
Sure.
in the community. It's two different things, right?
Sure, but what we were trying to do was to get rid of all racism based on skin colour,
Okay.
and to have space for the specifics of people's. I mean, Nigeria isn't the same as Jamaica,
No.
so, but you still have Black History Month.
Yeah.
You can have, you see what I'm saying?
This is what I'm saying. It's really strange phenomenon, the Black History Month, because it's definitely needed. The idea of categorising and cataloguing and saving and
and celebrating.
Yeah, preserving these
Yeah.
things, right? But they definitely have different roots. In the
They
different-
do, and the good thing, see, what I love about, say, the history that I was involved, not history, the politics, black sections of the Labour Party was then and still is about African, Caribbean, Asian. It still is.
Yeah.
And we celebrate and are willing and able to prepare to reflect each other.
And we have to be that as well, as the people in the community
Yeah.
have to embrace that idea.
Exactly.
It can't be the other way. We can't
No.
just say let the authorities got to do it.
Absolutely,
We as the
absolutely,
community-
and we need to learn to do that so that we can see solidarity, and also where we're different, to argue it.
Yeah.
That's not a problem,
Yeah.
is it?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I
Yeah.
think it's really. I think that's one of the things that allowed me to sort of like, build bridges with certain people in my community that was non-black.
Yeah.
In a sense, because they was being oppressed, whether it's
Yeah.
through poverty or inequality, I still recognise them.
Yeah.
Their achievements.
Yeah.
And that they're facing the same barriers as
Absolutely.
me.
So, and I mean, certainly, let's say travellers and gypsies are in a position of being spat upon, appalling things that happen. And I don't like the idea, never have, and I've always argued against the idea of a hierarchy of oppressions in which you put this group is more oppressed than that group. And I don't think you can measure all that you should be measuring. We're all recognising we're oppressed, and we seem to learn things about each other's communities and societies so that we avoid, minimise, or whatever the word is, oppression. I don't want to be in a hierarchy in which one group is seen as more oppressed than another group. It's because it's impossible to measure it.
Yeah, because I always sometimes think, especially in Brixton, some people want to own that ownership of being oppressed more.
Precisely, that's what I mean. The competition. I can't
It's like, oh no, you're not black enough. Oppression should just not be there.
Yeah, exactly. We should be fighting against oppression, not seeing who's the most oppressed.
And then go, okay, I'm on your side.
Yeah.
You got the most oppression, so I'm going to stand behind you. Which
It's
is,
mad.
Yeah,
It does reinforce oppression. It seems to me, because the white boys carry on doing what, and while we're fighting amongst ourselves,
who's been more oppressed.
yeah.
So I read an article where, what was it? I think he was saying that what started off as the beginning of concept of Black History Month. You're now looking at, I think it was in 2017, I saw the article in The Guardian.
Saying what?
And you were saying...
Oh, me saying
Yeah,
something,
you were saying that there's maybe some more changes, or it needs to be rejigged. What do you think?
Well, mainly, I do think it should be rejigged, because black excludes all Asians. And I want to go back to all of us being in this umbrella called black, a political, not a racial, right? Political, and we look and listen and support each other's experiences. They're different. I mean, big island, little island in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
They're not all the same. You can't just say, Caribbean is all the same, because it's not.
Yeah.
Different histories, things. So, just like you can say Europe or European, and everybody's different. Doesn't mean they all have to be the same. Shame Mr. bloody Cameron and the rest of them. Anyway.
We was talking with someone the other day, and he said this really mad line, and Charlotte looked at me, and I was like, yeah, we kind of like have that sometimes in the community. And he went, I've been Germany, I've been Portugal, I've been Greece, I've been this, I've been that. So Charlotte goes, have you been to Africa? He went, oh, I'm not going to He went, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go. And it literally was, she looked at me with surprise in her head, and like, really? I thought
you learn that shit. The point is you learn it, because if we're living in a society that views the continent of Africa as wholly troubled, poor place.
We do. Third world, not even.
Yeah.
It's third.
And it seems to be okay for Europeans to come into parts of Africa and steal the resources. It seems to be okay. Britain does it.
Mm.
France does it. Belgium does it. At least the Chinese seem to be willing to pay for doing it.
They've seen the value of it. So what we're really talking about now, we're talking about politics becoming more humanitized.
Well,
Is
it should be.
humanitarian?
No, yeah, it should be, but it always should be. It should be about people.
Yeah.
It's not just about power. Politics currently is about power, and I think it should be about human beings, and not according different groups of human beings more power or less, or more status or less. So women have a lesser status than men, white have a higher status than black, etc. I know some people believe it, but I'm willing to fight against it, because what I want is a world in which we are each of us free of oppression, and each of us have equal esteem. If you were Christian, you could say in the sight of God. I'm not, but I still think we are, each of us, of equal value. And that means the fascists. I may not like them, but I can't have it both.
It's all got to be in the pot, right?
Yeah, I can't have it
one
one
way or the
way.
other.
Exactly. I've got to include the
Yeah,
fascists.
yeah. Everyone has to have an equal say.
Yeah.
So you can have your say, but I can have mine.
Yes,
And
exactly.
I think that's the balance.
Yeah,
We're not. Sometimes they squash that voice out, and I don't want. I don't want.
Where are they going to go, and what trouble are they going to do behind our backs?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No.
Right?
So let them have the right to speak, and let us have the right to disagree with them.
In a decent.
Not without violence.
Non-violent communication.
Yeah.
So I do this poem called Collect, Preserve, Celebrate. Well, I did it for the opening of the Black Archives. And so if I had to say to you, you had to have everything, what would you collect out of your culture?
What I collect. I don't know if there are things.
Would it be can we look at, would it be something solid? Would it be something to do with tradition? Would it be something to do with a garment? What would you like? If you had to pass
I
it
can't
on.
think of a thing. Some of the things are intellectual.
Yeah.
They are ideas. They are ways of living. I'm not sure. I don't put value on computers or or gems
So what do
or
you put value on?
ideas.
So you collect ideas.
Yes.
That's not. We put it over here.
Yeah.
So that's one you would preserve. The idea. And what would you celebrate?
Diversity, difference. And that includes the things I don't like. Things I do like and the things I don't like. I love. It's more than like. It's love. In terms of things, I can find some things boring, and I don't want to destroy them. I simply don't necessarily want to spend any time with them.
So we pin it down to there, and let's pin it down to Brixton. Let's think about something you're collecting Brixton that you think should be preserved and celebrated in your lifetime.
Oh, what?
And you've done a lot.
I don't know. I think it's some of the spirit of people. The spirit of people. When I think about, some of them are now dead, some of the women and men who have done things, who have given of themselves to others, I think that is what warms and it's what I celebrate. And it's still happening. I can name individuals who in the past have done that, but I know it's still happening today. Well, when I was young, I think I explored politics. I was in a kind of revolutionary socialist group, I can't even remember his name now, the guy who was running it. They had offices in Clapham, near Clapham Common Station. And I did find him a bit overpowering. And I left. Later, when I say later, I'm talking about 30 years or more later, I heard that he was sexually exploiting women. I didn't, members. I probably wasn't his sort. I don't, I mean, I would have, thankfully, I was capable of knocking somebody out. So, you know, that bit was, but somebody in the name of socialism was exploiting women is the sort of person I would want to be both rude and possibly even physical with, as in not in a nice way. I don't know, because I don't think I've ever been with another group of women or men who have recommended violence. It's just a kind of feeling, but I don't. That was the strongest, and the good thing out of that was that I became much more aware and much more careful. I was naive. I mean, when you're 14, 15, 16, there are things you don't know, and I didn't know about rape and the sexual exploitation of women. I sort of did. My mother gave me some warnings, but it wasn't strong in my awareness. But my dad had taught me how to box, and I did feel capable of defending myself. I had to. It wasn't a game.
Because in those, there was a lot of sexual exploitation of women, right? There was,
yes.
It's part of the fabric of society in a sense, really, isn't it? I mean, I even grew up with it on TV, from just simple things from the Carry On films and
yes,
things
there
like
was.
this.
But as a feminist now, I will not. I recognise and I won't tolerate. I will say something, and I will explain to my granddaughters, I should say, and give advice in a way that we were too polite back in the day. We were too polite. You don't want to talk about those sorts of things as though you're bringing them on by talking about them. But I think you give women power by showing the possibilities, if they happen, of, get away, speak about it,